The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown, Chapter 26, The Tornado. The weather forecasts warned of possible tornadoes that day, but despite their scientific equipment, experts still couldn't predict exactly when or where a tornado would strike. So most farmers carried on with their usual tasks while keeping a watchful eye on the skies. Roz was out in the fields, loading hay bales onto the flatbed truck as towering, puffy clouds rose up from the south. Raindrops lightly tapped against her body, and she thought nothing of it. The wind began to blow, and still the robot continued with her work. It wasn't until the first flash of lightning that Roz finally called it quits. She climbed onto the back of the truck, and it automatically rolled across the hayfield toward the driveway. The storm developed quickly. Dark clouds started swirling and bulging downward, lower and lower, like a giant twisting finger pointing at the countryside. A tornado was beginning to form. When the truck reached the driveway, Roz hollered, "Drive faster!" The engine revved, the tires kicked up gravel, and the robot held on tight. The funnel cloud continued stretching downward. It brushed the tree line, and leaves exploded into the air. Dust whirled around and around, rising higher with each spin. Then the tornado touched the ground. A siren sounded in the distance, but the tornado was growing noisier and angrier as it blew in from the fields, and the siren was quickly lost to the howling winds. The truck charged up the driveway and into the cluster of farm buildings. Roz looked ahead at the house and saw frightened faces in the windows. "Go to the storm shelter!" she hollered in her loudest voice. Then she leaped off the truck and ran to help the Sharifs. Leaves and sticks flew sideways, whipping against the robot's body, knocking her off balance. Behind her, the farm buildings rattled and groaned. The milking parlor was shaking violently. With a long, terrible screech, its entire roof peeled off and sailed away on the wind. 4 blurry shapes appeared in the backyard. Mr. Sharif shielded his face and hobbled alongside the house toward the storm shelter. He threw open the door and waved everyone down the stairs. Oscar went first, then Jaya, but Jad wasn't moving. "Come on, Jad!" yelled his father. The boy stood still, shaggy hair flying everywhere, and stared up at the towering, twisting tornado. He used to have nightmares about tornadoes, but this was no nightmare. It was real, and it was getting closer. The clouds swirled faster. The wind roared louder. The trees bent down to the ground. Jad suddenly felt strong arms around him, and Roz whisked him to safety. Mr. Sharif reached up from inside the shelter, desperately grasping for his son. And just when Roz thrust the boy into his father's arms, a blast of wind slammed the shelter door closed and swept our robot away. At first, Roz didn't realize she was in the tornado. She kept expecting to fall back to the ground, but the wind only lifted her higher and higher. She saw the treetops, the rooftops, the faraway fields. More of the countryside came into view with each spin around the funnel cloud. Our robot's survival instincts were blaring in her head, urging her to protect herself. But what could she do? The tornado was in control. The winds whirled her up and around, up and around. Roz could almost imagine what it was like to fly, and she thought of Bright Bill. It seemed her final moments would be spent in her son's airborne world. Roz wasn't the only thing swept away in the storm. Dust, gravel, leaves, branches, fence posts, and farm equipment were all swirling around with her. The robot was pelted by flying objects, big and small. She never even saw the shovel coming. The heavy tool wheeled around the tornado and clang! It hit the back of her head. Everything suddenly went dark, while Roz was still up in the sky.